Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained, like someone just sucked the energy right out of you? Maybe it was a conversation with your boss, a friend, a colleague, or even a family member. They didn't yell at you, they didn't insult you, but somehow everything ended up being about them, their needs, their opinions, their problems. And you were just the audience in that conversation. No matter how you tried, you couldn't succeed in having a neutral and balanced conversation with them. Today, we're diving into one of the most confusing and exhausting personality types we all eventually come across in life: narcissism. Now, here's the real question: are narcissists born that way, or do people learn to become self absorbed over time? Why do some people outgrow that childish self centeredness while others never seem to? And more importantly, how do you deal with these people without losing your peace, your voice, or your sanity? If you've ever felt like you're constantly managing someone else's emotions, always second guessing yourself around them, or walking on eggshells to avoid their blow ups, this episode is for you. Because understanding narcissism isn't just psychology, it's a life skill. It teaches us how to protect our boundaries, stay emotionally grounded, and recognize manipulation before it drains us and makes us feel unworthy. So let's unpack it all, starting with a clear understanding of what narcissism really is and why it shows up so often in our personal and professional lives. And you have all the reasons to wonder, why am I bringing this up in a life skills podcast? Because I have dealt with way too many narcissistic personalities, especially at work. And honestly, it shook my confidence. It made me constantly second guess my abilities and wonder if I was the problem. I have always enjoyed team collaboration, but when you've got a narcissistic colleague on board, it's a different game. I would say a game you must learn to retain your sanity. They make everything a competition. They take on tasks that clearly can be done in the given time, just to look like a hero. And when things fall apart, they're quick to point fingers, not at themselves, but everyone around them. Over time, I started noticing the mental and emotional toll it took, how they'd shrink your presence, how you begin to carefully filter everything you say or do, just to avoid triggering their fragile ego. And in that process, you start losing your identity. That's why this conversation matters. Learning how to deal with narcissistic people is a life skill, and that too, a critical one. Whether it's a coworker, a friend, a family member, a professor, or even a stranger on a subway, recognizing the pattern and knowing how to handle it can protect your mental peace and your emotional strength. So the first question I wanted to explore with this topic was, are people born with narcissistic trait? And what I found was interesting. So in a way, you can say yes, but not in the way people often think. So let's try to put this in perspective. When we're born, as a baby, we're extremely self-centered. We don't understand boundaries, identity, or relationships. In fact, infants actually believe that they and their caregiver are the same person. There's no sense of me and you in them. It's just one connected experience for them. When I cry, you come. When I'm hungry, you feed me. That's the mindset of an infant. And that's not narcissism. It's called survival. But here's where it gets interesting. As we grow, we start learning that the world doesn't revolve around us. We realize sometimes our needs aren't met instantly, but we learn to trust that they will be met. This begins the healthy emotional process of yielding self-centeredness and realizing I'm not all powerful. I can't control everything around me, and I'm separate from others, and I need them. This realization is crucial for infants. Through this process, we develop a healthy ego, emotional self-awareness, and the ability to form satisfying adult relationships. Now, narcissistic traits begin to emerge when that developmental process breaks down. When a child doesn't learn about the limits of control or doesn't feel safe or seen consistently, they may grow up building emotional walls to protect themselves. They miss that vital life lesson. that I need others, but I can't control them. Let's dig deeper into this. So it means that as children, we're supposed to learn a really important life lesson that we can't always get what we want, and that's okay. We start to understand that other people have their own needs, their own feelings, and their own limits. This is how we learn empathy, patience, and mutual respect. But when that learning doesn't happen, maybe because the caregivers were inconsistent or overly indulgent, neglectful, or emotionally unavailable, the child doesn't develop a realistic understanding of relationships. Instead of learning that sometimes I have to wait or I can't control how others respond to my cries, the child grows up believing if I don't get what I want, I have to push harder, control more, and demand more. They don't understand healthy give and take. They see people as tools to meet their needs, not as individuals with boundaries. That's when narcissistic traits start forming. Not out of malice, but out of emotional survival, a way to feel powerful in a world that once felt unreliable or unsafe. So, to answer the question correctly, we aren't born as narcissists, but we are born self-centered, and we must learn emotional boundaries, trust, and empathy through our early relationships. When those lessons are missed, that's when narcissistic traits can form and solidify. And here's the kicker. It's not always a choice. Many narcissists are protecting themselves from a deep fear of being powerless, unloved, or being exposed. But understanding this doesn't mean tolerating the behavior. It means recognizing the roots so we can protect ourselves, develop compassion without codependency, and nurture healthier relationships. Now, brace yourself and let's get real for a second. Have you ever been in an argument with someone and out of nowhere they hit you with, "You're such a narcissist"? Wow, that stings. And maybe they were mad at you. Maybe they said it as a low blow, or maybe they meant it. And now it's stuck in your head like an echo. So that brings us to an uncomfortable but a very important question. How do you know if you are the narcissist? Now, before we go any further, this isn't about shaming or labeling anyone. This is about self-awareness, plain and simple. Because let's be honest, you can't fix what you don't even know is there. Now, keeping that in mind, let's move forward. And here's the tough truth. Most people with narcissistic traits have no idea they're showing them. Why? Because when things go wrong in their relationships, they don't self-reflect. They blame. And it sounds like this. She was just too sensitive to my joke. He couldn't handle my standards. People just don't get me. So instead of asking, could I be wrong in thinking that way, they walk away feeling even more convinced that they were right. That's how narcissism hides behind a wall of justification and ego. But here's the thing. Over time, patterns start to show. Failed relationships, short-lived relationships, the same complaints from different people, and eventually it becomes harder and harder to ignore the common denominator. So, how do you know if it's you? Let me give you a few honest questions to reflect on. First, do people often tell you that you always need to be right? You might think, no, I'm just a confident person. And maybe you are. But if people regularly feel unheard or overpowered in conversations with you, it's worth checking in with yourself. Second, have multiple people told you things like, you expect everything to go your way, or why can't you just be happy for me? If someone else's success or joy makes you feel irritated, ignored, or upset, ask yourself why that bothers you. Their shine doesn't dim yours. Third, do you find yourself trying to shape others into your ideal version of them? Telling a partner how to dress, how to talk, how to act. If your sense of peace depends on controlling how others show up, that might be a sign your confidence isn't as solid as it seems. Because here's what is really happening behind the scenes. When your self-worth is built on how others respond to you, how they behave, succeed, or praise you, your inner world becomes unstable. That's not just narcissism, that's emotional fragility trying to wear confidence like a costume. And the hard part, most people don't even realize it until something breaks, like a breakup, loneliness that won't go away, or a quiet sadness that creeps in even when everything looks fine on the outside. That's usually when, for the first time, a narcissistic person might ask for help. So if you're sitting with this right now, thinking, wait, could I be the problem sometimes? That's not weakness. That's strength. That's emotional maturity knocking on your door. Because here's the truth. Therapy isn't just for people who are broken. It's for people who are brave enough to acknowledge that something needs to change in order to grow. And for that to happen, an intervention is required. Narcissism isn't about being selfish or evil. It's often about unhealed fear, insecurity, or emotional survival mode that got stuck in adulthood. And the cure? It starts with a pause and an acknowledgement, a question, and the willingness to face the mirror without flinching. If you can go do that, you're already further along than most people will ever get. And that kind of self-awareness, that's not just healing. That's a life skill. One that can completely change how you connect, grow, and show up in the world. So the next question is, how do you protect your peace without becoming a victim to their constant demands? Especially when the narcissist is your boss, your friend, or even your own family member. The answer isn't in changing them. It's in changing how you respond to them. Start by setting boundaries without feeling guilty. Say no without explaining every detail. Learn to recognize manipulation for what it is, not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their need for control. Learn to detach yourself emotionally. You don't have to attend or respond to every argument you're invited to. And most importantly, protect your time, your energy, and your attention like they are the currency of your peace, because they are. The truth is, you're not here to constantly manage someone else's emotions, expectations, or ego. You're here to grow, to live authentically, and to build relationships that are mutual, not draining. You can still love people from a distance. You can still work with them professionally without giving them power over your mental space. You don't have to fight, fix, or run. You just have to stand firm in your truth and believe your capabilities. That's not being cold. That is being clear. The only way to deal with a narcissist is by being non-narcissistic. In other words, not acting like one. Now, it may sound simple, right? But what does that actually mean? It means that you can't outsmart, can't outcontrol, or can't outshout a narcissist, because that's exactly the game they want you to play. Narcissists thrive on drama, ego clashes, and emotional power struggles. That's their home turf. The more you try to prove a point, defend yourself endlessly, or match their energy, the more you will lose your own self. So in my opinion, the smartest way to deal with them is to not become like them at all. Being non-narcissistic means you stay calm instead of reacting with chaos. You set boundaries, not emotional traps. You stay grounded in your values instead of trying to win the conversation. And most importantly, you stop taking the bait when they guilt trip, gaslight, or poke for a reaction. You're not trying to fix them, change them, or beat them at their own game. You're just not giving away your energy to behavior that drains you. You simply step out of the emotional tug of war completely. So yes, the only way to deal with a narcissist is to be everything that they're not. Clear, calm, self-aware, and steady. Because once you stop playing their game, you start protecting your peace. And that is your power that they can't touch. And with that, we come to an end of this segment of Life Skills with Jobin. If you benefited from this episode, please leave a review. I'd love to hear your feedback and perspective on this topic. It also helps me to reach more people and grow my channel. So a little gesture of kindness will be greatly appreciated. And also connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Life Skills with Jobin. You've been a wonderful listener. Thank you for being here today.